Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Endless Celts Podcast, another edition of STATSDROP, joined by Tony and Stewart. How are you both?
Yeah, good, mate. Thanks. How are you?
Doing well on a beautiful Sunday. A beautiful Sunday.
A beautiful Sunday. 100%, buddy. In a footballing sense, this weekend couldn't have went any better. I mean, we're sitting looking down, 7 points clear. Van Bronckhorst's going to get a new 5-year contract with them across the city, so we're all happy and buzzing about that. But as everyone knows, this episode is a bit different from our normal podcast, which we do on a Monday and Friday. Just kind of looking at numbers and data and analytics and all that type of stuff. And again, it's a learning process for myself. So again, and people in the comments get involved and throw out any questions they have to us. We'll try our best to answer. But Tony, start with yourself. The banner of the show, kind of we're looking about 4 games back now. The Celtic and Shakthar game. Probably, if we had any chance to get anything from the European campaign, it would have been that if we took the victory. All the talk around it was Postecoglou saying we're competing at this level, we're showing we're capable. But all in all, we kind of failed, Tony. For me, I called it a failure. We don't have any European football after Christmas. People think that's a bit harsh in terms of what I'm saying. But in terms of numbers and data, what is that saying? But I know, as you said before, data can be misleading, but a wee bit of a shining light, Tony, in this European campaign.
Yeah, so if you look at the Shakthar games, 1.4 XG versus 0.7 XG in the last one, so 0.7 difference. Celtic, you're not giving yourself much margin for error there. You would be looking for a difference to give yourself that victory. Where the away game against Shakthar was a bit different. It was 1.5 versus 0.4, so a 1 goal difference there. So that's obviously going to be the games that you measure yourself against that third team, because Leipzig and Madrid were just a bit a class above. And Shakthar result against Leipzig, when they played against the run of play and got 4 goals from 5 shots, sort of upset the apple cart a bit, because it put them with points right away. So if you want to measure Celtic and the progress, you look at the 2 games really against Shakthar, and there wasn't much margin for error for Celtic, but the Celtic did perform better if you're looking at expected goals. We did take the lead against Shakthar. In the last game, you think, right, you've got the lead. That was the hardest part, getting that goal and getting in the lead.
Yeah.
You hold on to it. My view, from not necessarily a stats view, but more just an opinion on the game, is like if you go into a game, especially if you take the Real Madrid game, if you go into games with an attacking midfielder as your defensive midfielder, I don't think it's a surprise that you concede goals. You've got a defensive midfielder there is to help protect the back four. And I know Mudryk's goal is a great goal from him, and he's got the speed and he's got the shot, etc. And would a defensive midfielder for that individual goal make any difference? Maybe not. But I just think the whole way you go about the game, I think you need a defensive midfielder in front of that back four.
I think me personally, Tony, now, again, number side of things could prove me wrong here, but on the eye, I said it in our previous podcast, I think Matt O'Reilly's probably doing a better job there than McGregor was up until he got injured, because I think it's fair to say McGregor hasn't been his best this season, and he was probably due a rest. He probably has a bit of burnout, and an injury came at the wrong time as well, obviously. But we talked about it as well, Matt O'Reilly in the 6. For me, he's been impressive. Has he not been impressive for yourself?
Yeah, if you look at him individually and his tackling and his passing, but I think it's about the shape of the team, the organising of the team. Part of that defensive midfield is to help organise the team. You see McGregor doing that. So McGregor, I did question McGregor at this level, at Champions League level, defensively, controlling the game, passing and going forward and carrying the team forward, organising the team, definitely happy with him. Just defensively, I wasn't sure. But McGregor's improving all the time as well. But it's just, you look at the team performance rather than the individual. Individually, it looked okay, but if you look at the team performance, and I mean, defensively, we're short on goals. We did last season, in all the European games, and we're continuing to do so. So you think in that situation, are we missing? For me, Abelgard's that's the big red flag, isn't it? But for me, he had all the attributes, and anytime any clips I've seen of him beforehand, or any minutes he's had, he seems to be living up to his profile. And defensively, I think that's what you need. You look at Leipzig; they had two sort of holding midfielders against us. And I just think at that level, that's going to scupper you. If you look at pressures, so that was something I was looking at across the games, and the pressures we had. Then I think our biggest issue was unsuccessful pressures. So we were making presses high up in that final third, and teams were just playing through us, and that was just tiring the team out. And we've seen in a lot of games in the early doors, we were falling off after 55 minutes. So if you looked at the XG trend across the game, after 55 minutes, we were falling off. But that did improve against Leipzig at home, and then Shakthar as well. So Shakthar, we continued. And there was little tweaks against Leipzig. There was not as many final third presses, and there was more in defensive third. So there was tweaks along the way. So I think it's a big learning curve for us. People say, yeah, Shakthar team, a lot of their players, because it was a newly assembled team, a lot of their players were new to Champions League level as well. But they're a team that's played there, and that experience can only help you. And you've just got to play the games to learn and gain a bit of confidence, especially like the forwards as well for the shooting.
I think it's saying that they're a team that's been in that stage. Yeah, they've been a constant in the Champions League group stage. But let's be real, Tony. Their team changed an awful lot in the last year and a half due to what's going on, obviously, in their area and stuff like that. So they've lost all their Brazilian players, all their kind of talisman. And just looking straight back at you, Stuart, I know you're busting again. I just want to talk about this pressure stuff, Tony. I seen you two speak about it after the Real Madrid game, and obviously I'm still kind of grasp what that means. There's been a lot of instances in the Champions League where we're pressing and looking a wee bit like headless chickens because we're not regaining the ball, and then two passes later they're up the pitch and it could be a goal scoring opportunity or leads to a goal anyway. Is that an issue? And if it is, then Tony, what could be tweaked to stop that?
Yeah, it could be an issue short term, but it could part of that's the thing, mate. Where you're doing your Angie system and Angie sticking to his guns. People say, should he do it or should he be more pragmatic? It depends, because short term it might not work, but long term it might play through. But as long as you're progressing and you're not continuing to do the same things, as long as you're learning and you're getting to an end point, where you can't just do that all the time, because you do that all the time, you're going to get beat. So in the last game, we had 45 successful pressures, and that was the most. Well, I'm saying the last game, I'm saying the Shakthar game. That was the most successful pressures we had. So that was a bit of improvement, but it was 28% success rate. So our pressing stats against all the other teams in Champions League are pretty good, but pretty comparable in that sort of top 7-8. But this how successful we are, and that's a bit of as a team getting used to when to press and being more successful, and also a little bit of where we're pressing, because you've seen a lot more of the teams let our centre halves have the ball. And I think from our point of view, one, I think being selective of when we do the pressing, maybe a slightly less, but trying to be more clinical. Another bit is where as well, not so much the final third, but more in that, like the forwards just dropping that little bit back. So a little bit of tweaks, which I think Ange will do. So that is one thing, and obviously something we talked about before was our finishing. So we're getting the chances, but we weren't finishing them. Because like if you look at that Shakthar game, Giakoumakis played Kyogo through, and that's a chance that Kyogo could have easily scored. He scores just 2-0 up, and you say that's us one, and playing Giakoumakis and Kyogo locked. Do you know what I mean? So small margins.
I'm glad Jack's Brown could go up. Coming to you, Stuart, for this one. On the team sheet with Jack and Magnus in the Champions League game at home, obviously the most pressurised game of the actual campaign itself to kind of have any hope of staying in European football. And we're talking about pressures and different things like that. I think Tony's right, but we do press and that looks good, 100%. But when you don't regain the ball, you're getting opened up after one or two passes. For me, that's concerning. I look at the likes of Madrid. Obviously, they're light years ahead of us, but it looks like sometimes they're walking into space and they're just moving across ever so gently, and then they're bang their way. Vinicius or Rodrigo gets it, and then it's a goal. But in our instance, I'll come back to it. Sometimes Tony made a great point as well. The chances, the clinical side of things, we're not quite there yet. So, in your opinion, from what you can see, even from the likes of the pressures and stuff, is there something that could be done? Because I look at the Shakthar blueprint, and I know people don't like me saying it, but they've basically got 2 banks of 4, small gaps in between, and then they get the ball. I mean, we all know they're a counter-attacking team, but they do it very well. So is it a case of Ans has to tweak something, or us as a football club have to get a better level of player?
Probably a better level of player, or we get more experience, because this is the first time a lot of these players have played Champions League level football. Can't really expect them just to go in and and I just said umpteen times, I'm not going to. There's no point in changing the way we play for a specific game to maybe get a result. We stick to the system, stick to the process. That when you then reach that tipping point where when things start clicking in terms of the XG converts the way or goes closer to what it should be, you get the pressing a bit better, off the ball stuff works better. When that all tips over into the right place, you've got the football that everyone wants to see. There's no point in that. That's his argument. So that's the way he would see it. But in terms of just overall the Champions League, I think, like Tony's touched on numbers and that, numbers were fine. I think just on the wrong side of luck on plenty of occasions throughout the whole, and especially that Shakthar result in that first game, just we were on the kind of back foot the whole time, and we never really got, if we'd won that game in Shakthar, the away game, that maybe would have opened it up a wee bit. But it's frustrating because we don't want to sit there and watch Celtic getting beat, or making there's always things that could be better. Talking about the midfield as well, that's really interesting in terms of O'Reilly. He's that can encapsulate it, that he had an option there in Abelgard that was slightly more defensive because McGregor was out, but yet he continued to stick with O'Reilly because he wants that more progressive player in the build-up. He wants more attacking players on the pitch. So that just kind of shows that he's always going to do that. He's always going to stick to those principles. But yeah, it's going to be interesting what that midfield looks like next year when we go to the Champions League again, hopefully, because you'd imagine whether O'Reilly and Hatate are still here might be questionable. Does Abelgard stay and he becomes a McGregor? Where does McGregor go if somebody comes in to play that 6? I think it's always going to be a 1 and a 2. So we clearly identified that as well, because after the Brazilian guy Sousa for so long over the summer, so that was clearly identified, and we still brought in somebody right at the last minute of that profile. Whether he just wasn't up to speed, potentially, but it's just telling that even with that injury, and this guy, Abelgard maybe wasn't quite match ready or whatever, but he's still stuck to his guns. So it's frustrating. It was frustrating the Champions League campaign, but in terms of Tony's touched on a lot of numbers and stuff, there's off the ball stuff, the XG and that we could have, there's areas to improve on, but I think I don't want to come back to whatever the person said, it's a learning curve. We don't want to say that, but it is, unfortunately. But
everyone's favourite words in this podcast, Stuart. And I think as well, Stephen Ray comes in here with a good point. If Hans wants to continue with his philosophy, he needs to get ruthless with players and look to upgrade at least 2 possessions every window. We struggled to score and couldn't keep a clean sheet. And come to that one, Tony. Obviously, defensively, it always has been an issue for Celtic in Europe. We know that for past years and stuff like that. But I look at Hatate, I look at O'Reilly. I think Stuart's right to point out, if they're here next year, that's questionable, because Hans Postecoglou's come out on numerous occasions now saying that he's going to be in that kind of ruthless market type thing, Moneyball. And we talked about it extensively, me and Willie, on Friday. For me personally, quite excited about that if he does the planning right. But you look at Jota coming on and Real Madrid scoring a fantastic free kick. There is players who I think can make that step up if they keep going with what they're doing. Where do you think in the squad needs tweaked for the Champions League? If you had the choices, me personally, again, maybe a lethal striker away from finishing a few teams off.
It's a hard one. There's that many different positions that you want to see. I think one thing we need to look at is when Ange came in, you think about domestically, he had a team to build, and at the same time he had a team to build. He had a squad to build as well. So Ange had to get a new team, but also have the backup as well, because it was like just no players. So he done that. And when you go into Europe, I think we've got to get a team that's good enough to compete at that level before we even start thinking about a squad. And if you think about the team, many games did Jota miss. So Jota's a top creator. Jota's a top creator. So for me, you just can't expect Celtic to go into that Champions League without your top creator and be at that level just now. Do you know what I mean? It's like, I think for Celtic to go into the Champions League and be at that level is going to be hard anyway with Jota fit. And that's a challenge. It could be this year or next year or whatever. But when Jota's out injured, we can't just sort of say, right, okay, Jota's injured, we need a better squad and we need to still produce. I think sometimes you just have to realise if Jota's out, then the chance creation is just not going to be the same. As simple as that.
See as well, just looking back at you, Tony, I remember it was us speaking and you were saying about we were in like the top 4 of shots or XG, something like that. Did we still finish in that kind of bracket, or did we fall down towards the end?
So I don't know if like the overall teams. The one where we did, and this is an interesting start because this is so we were the top team for XG conceded from set pieces. So we conceded the lowest XG from set pieces and the lowest percentage of total from set pieces, which that's about sort of organised defence, and there must be something in there that we've done right.
Mm-hmm.
So, like out of 32 teams, we've got the lowest XG conceded from set plays. So there must be something good to take from there. It's just I know it wasn't the hardest group. Leipzig weren't, as much as they are a quality team, they weren't the best pot 2 team. And Shakthar,
totally agree.
Shakthar were one of the easiest pot 3 teams. So the group wasn't the most difficult, but it's still a hard thing to do when you're missing like Jota, you're missing McGregor, you're missing Starfelt as well. The Shakthar game, we weren't too far away. That Kyogo chance goes in, and Mudrik's not going to be there next year at Shakthar. He's a quality player.
He'll be at us.
Just that one chance. And in that Shakthar game, there was 282 final third passes, nearly more than double we had against Leipzig. 45% possession was in that final third. So you can understand from Ange's point of view, he's got Abada on the pitch, he's got Kyogo on the pitch, he's got Giakoumakis, he's trying to get goals there, he's trying to think, right, how do we get goals? The only thing I'd probably preferred Forrest than Abada when you're playing against tight defences who are... Shakhtar were really organised defensively. They're really organised. They've got a great shape about them. And I would have maybe just preferred Forrest there. And just to create and maybe O'Reilly in that number 10 with Abogard further back. That's what I would have preferred. But with Jota out, it's a massive ask. And we were a bit unlucky with Shakhtar, just a little bit. We could have got that win.
Yeah. I think as well what you're saying, the areas of concern for me are the top end of the pitch. That's where it is, more or less, in terms of finishing off them chances. And Monty has a question for you, Tony. Again, this is on the spot, so if you don't have it, don't worry about it. Tony, what's the stats on us giving away the ball in the Champions League? That is our biggest concern for me. Wasted possession, which again, I agree with. We do give it away a lot.
I'll try and find out, but I'm not. No, I don't think my gut feeling would be. I don't think it would be as bad as you think. Pass percentage.
It's one levels, isn't
it? So pass percentage. For the group stages, we were 9th out of 32 at 86.4%. So 9th out of 32. So it's not that bad. 86%.
Yeah, it's not bad. And Stuart, I was saying there as well, the areas at top end of the pitch. Bird Warrior has asked this question before, I'm sure, in another podcast, but I'll take it for here because it's a good one. It generates a good debate. Do you think, Stuart, Kyogo has done enough in Europe to justify a selection for a World Cup? Obviously, he wasn't selected. Either was Hatate, which was surprising for me. That's baffling. But on Kyogo himself, Stuart, European football for me didn't quite live up to it, in my opinion.
Yeah, maybe if he did, a couple of those ones go in, he maybe does make the squad. I've seen a few people that know more about the kind of Japanese national team say that he's maybe not as suited to their style of play. They don't play anything like an Ange Postecoglou Celtic team would play. It's a bit more kind of slower paced and a bit more that he's maybe just not suited to their style of play. So yeah, it's hard to tell because they're on the other side of the world and they'll have their eyes on players all over Europe that we're only seeing the one player that we think is better. Hatate seems to be the strangest one of all because he did perform pretty well on the European stage and he could have surprised at that. Interesting, Maeda's the one out of all of them that goes because he offers maybe something off the ball defensively that is a use to them that we see at Celtic as well. So yeah, I think he's always been a kind of volume. He needs a lot of chances to score, even domestically, Kyogo. So obviously, you go at European level, you've got less chances. You've got to take them, and he's maybe just not. It's just whether it would have made a difference to the World Cup, I have no idea. To his selection for World Cup, I've no idea. But yeah, surprising for us, obviously, because we see them every week and how good they are. That it's only Maeda that's the one that's going.
And Maeda is probably the one who came in for the most criticism this season, which is even more baffling that kind of stage. And just to address the comments, I know there's someone in causing a bit of havoc, but unfortunately, I'm not quite sure how to block this person, but enjoy it. We're 7 points clear. It's a great Sunday. Just enjoy us speaking and fire your questions to us. We don't need to pay attention to people like that. But to come back at you, Tony, one thing I'm interested in, and again, I'm going off the cuff here to apologise, but Reo Hatate, I thought he was excellent, even against Madrid. And I know we got pumped in the Bernabeu, but for me, he took the ball in situations where me personally, I would absolutely crap myself. He was taking on players, dropping the shoulder. Stuart, stop laughing. I'm being serious. Dropping the shoulder, he was away. He was whipping balls in left, right, and centre. He was getting involved left and the right hand side of play. What does it kind of say for him as a shining light? Does the numbers show the same for Hatate?
Hatate is a difficult one to show the numbers because it's like what do you look for? There's not a lot in creativity or shots and things like that. And passing percentage, if you go back to the question about passing percentage, actually Hatate is good because you don't want someone just 98% passing. You actually need to take some risks. Do you know what I mean? So sometimes being too cautious is not there. I put a tweet out last March or something like that when Hatate wasn't playing well and people were giving him a bit of a hard time, and I put a tweet out, Hatate will be player of the year next year. So I'm going to retweet that at the end of this season because I think the guy's class. I think, and I don't think he's, based on his ability, I don't think he's a 10 out of 10 game yet. I think he's 7 or 8 out of 10 each week. To his own ability, he's got everything. He's got pace. He's got ability. He's got vision. He's got temperament. He's calmness. Everything. He's got everything. The only thing that he's missing is just consistency. Just playing that full game at his best level. And when he gets that going, different class. But yeah, against Real Madrid, he looked calm. Looked to play well, and the guy's just a class player, But I think when you look at stats, and there's something we looked at before when we were talking about Moy and things like that,
Moy.
No, when we're talking about Moy and Moy getting a hard time, Moy had no minutes beside Hatate, and Hatate makes other players better. So when Hatate's playing in the team, you can see other players' stats going up, and he definitely makes. He's always available for a pass as well. So no, Hatate is. He's the one player that there's no ceiling for him. You look at where he potentially could be, because there's nothing in his game where you look at some like Matt O'Reilly or Kyogo or different people. There's maybe something missing. The only thing missing for Hatate is consistency. He's got everything else.
Yeah, 100% agree with you. We spoke about it on Friday, Stewart, when I was on with William on our usual podcast, and we were saying obviously this ruthless aggression in the transfer market, talking about fees and stuff like that. Again, in my opinion, I think Hatate could possibly break our transfer record. I really rate him that highly. I know sometimes he can be a bit frustrating when he tries to use his body all the time and sometimes gets out muscled and things like that, but he comes back time and time again. He never hides from the ball. And it's a strange one for me, because you're 100% right in what you say, Tony, in terms of signing. We looked at Kyogo and we thought, wow. We looked at Maida parts and we thought, this guy, he's quick and he can score goals. And then Hatate's been kind of bubbling under the surface. Now for me, he's the best Japanese player we have, and possibly the best player in our squad this season. What's your opinion on him?
Yeah, just like you guys, just exactly what you said. He probably does have the high ceiling. In terms of maybe highest value, I think maybe Jota would go for more potentially, just given the type of player he is. The fact he's come through at a big club, maybe that'll be more trusted by teams around Europe. Just he has been Europe-wise really good as well. Just and like you said in the stats, it's hard to, because you look at pass completion and stuff like that. Like Tony's saying, it's right to point out that he'll have lower because he's the one that'll take the risk in his passing. And all that sort of stuff. So yeah, just again, as much as I said I don't know anything about Japan's national team or how they play, amazed that a player like that who was showing real kind of top level ability at Champions League level just the last few weeks didn't even get a look, and I don't think he was even in the kind of the provisional squad at all. So bit of a strange one, but I think we'll probably look at it the positive, same with Kyogo as well, that the guys will get a bit more rest before the second half of the season, so we'll be selfish about it and look at it that way.
We'll take it. We'll definitely take that one, Stuart. And there's been a few comments, Tony. Frank Brennan and Brian Mourier have mentioned that Hatate reminds them of Oliver Incham. Obviously, me personally, when he first came to Celtic and he was starting games, I did think he was absolutely class. But then you've seen his real character come through very quickly, in my opinion, in terms of kind of huffing off the ball or not kind of giving his best. And I know he's been fits and starts. He's been all right in the English Championship. But can you see that comparison between him and Incham?
No, not at all. And Cham's biggest weakness was his attitude, and Hatate's got a tremendous attitude. You can see it. They're saying he treats the ball like a hot dog.
Somebody's definitely at the wind up.
Everyone is in this podcast. I think
real hot tatty is different.
I don't see the comparisons with Incham at all. I thought, as I said, he showed his true colours very quickly when he wasn't getting picked or he was coming on as a sub, and he just didn't look interested. Yeah, he was brilliant for us on occasions. Lazio, for example, scoring that goal. Some Glasgow Derby games, he showed up really well. So it's one of these things. And Brian Mourier, Incham disappeared in games when he was man-marked. One good game of 5. Yeah, I agree. But you also said that when Hatate's man-marked, he's not the same. I disagree. I think Hatate's really intelligent. That's when he can use both feet, get away from a player and play that forward-thinking pass, which is quite good from him. And just to come back to you, Tony, Guy Melrose has come in. I mean, we're going to do this, but we'll do it now. Can we give some love to Greg Taylor, lads? He's been absolutely phenomenal this season, continuing on from last season. Now, Tony, I know you looked into it. Not quite looking like that, but he has been excellent.
Yeah, it's hard to look at the stats because Taylor makes other players play better as well. He's the best thing about Taylor. Well, the best things is about his attitude. Taylor's attitude is a different class because you could just see him improving all the time. But the other thing for Taylor is his positioning, where he positions himself in the team. He's just constantly thinking about where he should be, and he's always in the right position. He's dragging players away. He's coming inside to leave space wide, or he's coming wide. So they're not necessarily stats to sort of back that up. When we're talking about pressures earlier on, so looking at the defenders, Taylor was averaging 12 pressures a game in the Champions League games, and the next best defender was Juranovic with 8. So quite a bit of difference there. And Taylor was the most with 3 successful ones as well. So you look at that. And then that last game, the Shakthar game, you had 10 out of 13 duels, 6 recoveries, and and 90% passing as well. So no, Taylor's been he's arguably player of the year at the moment. One of the shouts for player of the year at the moment.
Yeah, I agree. And I know Barnaby came in for a few games, and he obviously started yesterday's games and things like that. He's getting his chance. But for me, it's Greg Taylor making me self-conscious now about my goatee. I thought it looked all right. For me, it's Greg Taylor all the way. I think he used to be one of them guys I didn't really take to. I was a bit ignorant of him. I think we could do better. Obviously, within the price range now, probably take a wee while, probably do better. Greg Taylor, he's bought into Postecoglou from day one. Probably forced to because either he was out the door, to be honest, and he had to show the graph to show he's up for improvement. And not only has he improved the style of play for me, he's a leader within that team, which is quite surprising, really.
Yeah, I think that's probably one thing that's coming. It's not on the stats, but it's that leadership. But he's come up at big moments. Tynecastle scored a Livy yesterday. He's the one that switched on with a short free kick. Dundee United. When he's not doing the team talking huddle and stuff like that. So that's the kind of thing that fans are seeing more of with Taylor. I think the numbers probably aren't too much. It's maybe with Taylor, he's totally suited to that role. He was never a fullback that got to the byline. That was always one thing people would batter him for. That he wouldn't take a man on 1v1. He doesn't have to do that in that system. It suits his play because he can. His passing is one of his main attributes. He used to be a midfielder, I think, when he was a younger player. So, and he's got that energy because it's playing the fullback in that system demands a lot physically. He's got that stamina. He's robust. So, yeah, I think that the left back position is probably perfect. What you want, you've got somebody a bit more experience, although he's still young himself. You've got a consistent performer there, somebody you can rely on, somebody that's a leader, but you've also got a younger, talented, maybe can offer something a bit different. He's got that pace. He's a bit more kind of attacking minded, but you're going to get up and down with him because he's so young. He's come from Argentina. He's going to take a while to get used to things. But yeah, I think left backs were really well served there. And yeah, like I said, I think he'll challenge you, Tony, for your attack shout for player of the year just now anyway.
Yeah,
he has been fantastic. Coming back to you, Tony, you said we're well stacked. Stuart, Stephen Ray has a different opinion here. Taylor has undoubtedly improved and is having a great season. However, I believe left back is a position that's been upgraded. And I don't think he's been great at Champions League level. What do you think about that one, Tony? Because again, we speak about, me and Stuart did literally a couple minutes ago about players and upgrading positions. Me personally, I would have thought left back would have been on that list, but I have to say I've changed my mind a bit. I think Greg Taylor is learning from his performances here, from what I can see. He did get took for pace in Leipzig, but that didn't happen in the home return game. Against Shakthar, I thought he was solid, and obviously Madrid's a different kettle of fish. But do you think he could be the first choice going forward, or do you think that's a position, if we get someone better, we take that opportunity?
Yeah, I think so. Taylor's been great, and he's also been great in the Champions League as well, but it's going to be harder for him to maintain that or get that bit better in the Champions League, just because of his ceiling, because he's never going to get faster, he's never going to get taller. He will improve his sort of confidence on the ball or tackling, etc. But he is probably limited in some of his capabilities. Whereas Bernabei, I think, probably more attributes. He's a bit raw, but he's got better speed, better physicality. So Bernabeu could be somebody who progresses to be that player that could be better. I mean, he's maybe got a higher ceiling than Taylor. At the moment, Taylor's far ahead of him. But yeah, I think left back is something that in the future we might need better for the Champions League level. But there's other positions before that at the moment, I think.
Yeah, totally agree. That's a quick.
I wouldn't have said that at the start of the season, even though Taylor impressed me last year. At the start of the season, I would have said Taylor's not going to be good enough for Champions League. So I think Taylor to do that, what he's done this year, to say, well, actually, it's not the first priority, is credit to Taylor.
100%. I totally agree with that. And quick fire to his both, Stuart, start with you. Overall feeling of the Champions League campaign as a whole?
Learning curve.
Oh, don't say them words, man. That's a cop-out. What are you feeling in here? Come on, let me hear it.
I genuinely, when you seen that group, you went, right, we've got a chance. You know, a third, it's disappointing. Ultimately, overall, it's disappointing because at least we should have got closer to that to get into that third spot. And we weren't a million miles away from it, but yeah, disappointing and also a learning curve.
And that's the end of the show.
I'm glad. I'm glad. Last time I had the Champions League this season.
It's, as you said, a learning curve. So we're all learning about it. What about yourself, Tony? What are you thinking?
So you've got some fans that say it's not good enough and it's the worst thing in the world, and you've got other fans who are saying, well, you can't expect us to go in. I'm a bit in the middle. I think it depends what way you go. If you back Ange, and everybody said at the start of the season, Ange is not going to change his way. He's going to play the same way in the Champions League, and we're going to struggle to do that straight away. That everybody predicted that at the start of the season, and then when that comes true, Ange did play the same way. He never changed, and we did struggle doing that. Everybody's now up in arms. So for me, you either stick by your principles and say I'm backing Ange and I'm happy to do that, or you say no. I would like to have seen a bit more tweaks. I think Ange is new to Champions League, and he underperformed. Basically, he underperformed this year. Do we let him away with that underperformance based on everything he's done? Yeah, there's reasons that you can take on board there. There's been a bit of naivety with the pressing, I definitely think for the defensive midfielder point of view. Because if take away the Abelgard argument, if Abelgard's out, I would have still, and you're going to shoot me for this, Stephen, but I'd have still played, say somebody like McCarthy or something. I'd have played.
Jesus!
I think you've got to play a defensive midfielder in Europe. You've got to play somebody that knows the role. You've got to play somebody that knows the role in that position. You can't take a risk with O'Reilly there. It's just about organising it, the whole team, organising that team. So for me, the press and things like that, Abada and Maeda playing against Leipzig, two players who you need a more creative player. If you're going to play one of them, you need another one creative. So little bits like that. I think Ange will learn from, but you've got to say it wasn't good enough, and I think you've got to be more pragmatic. I don't think you can go to the Bernabeu against Real Madrid. I don't think
you're getting it.
I know, but you see, you go to the Bernabeu and you play Real Madrid, and you don't play with a defensive midfielder. You beat 5-1. You know what I mean? I'm not saying that we should play park the bus stuff. I'm saying we should play the same style and the same tactics. I'm just thinking the player selection, you just need to be a bit more respected opposition, I would say, at that level.
See, to be fair, I think the exact same with you. But I thought there should have been more, not cautious, but kind of having that security blanket with the back four. No, O'Reilly could do it, but if you bring an Abelgard beside him and play a Tate in the 10, you could do something like that. Obviously, with Forrest or Abada on the right and Jada with he was hit the left and Meta. It is possible to do, and that's why I'm thinking next season. I'm a wee bit worried about next season, if I'm honest with you, because I don't like the fact that everyone's saying we're going to improve, but people are failing to realise again that the teams who are around us, they're going to improve again. So is this going to be the same argument going forward? We'll obviously come across that next season. I think we're pretty well versed in the Champions League talk. I know Stewart wants to move on, so we will park the Champions League back here, but in the back of me here, and we'll go on to the next league game after that. Obviously, Stewart, the European campaign wasn't a success. Picking ourselves up for a trip to the Tony Macaroni Plastic 3G Arena. A bit of a curse previously. Let's be fair. A couple of results and they kind of didn't go our way. Just to kind of talk about the stats and overall what I do. The Bear our stats, as I like to call them. 4 shots for Livy, 17 for us, 2 on target for them, 6 for us with 76% possession, 645 passes, 87% accuracy, 15 fouls, 3 yellow cards, 2 offsides, 4 corners. And the lineup that day was, let me get it up, Joe Hart, Ralston, Vickers, Jens, Taylor, Moy, your favourite player, O'Reilly, Hatate, Haksabanovic, Furuhashi, and James Forrest. The end of the game, obviously, Stuart, as I said, picking ourselves up. Tough arena. Previous times anyway, under different managers. One thing that Ange has definitely done for me, he's changed the mindset of the players to not make that an excuse. And I thought we steamrolled them. I really did. I thought we played really well. What did the numbers say for that?
Yeah, they really backed up. I think, Tony, you had in your piece, this was the lowest open play XG conceded this season, 0.03. They had I think it was Obalai in the 86th minute. So everyone else came from set plays. I think they had the chance from, Nubly, the free kick in the first half was 0.16 XG. That was our best chance. So yeah, I think what StatsBomb do when you look at their reports, that they do kind of take the XG and give it a win percentage or draw percentage, and the win percentage for the other team. Celtic win was 97%. Draw was 3%. Livy win was 0%. That's just absolute domination, like complete and utter domination. In terms of from Celtic side, it was probably roughly average XG 2.47. That's just slightly below the league average, which I think is 2.52. Just shots against. You said 17. I think 18.6 is the average. So yeah, I think you're saying I wrote that down as 1 win at Livy since they returned to the top flight in 2018 before the game last season. So that's now twice in a row. Won there 3-0 comfortably. I think that probably tells you a lot of how far Celtic have come. That was a place that was always a worry when you see it on the fixture list, but not now. Not that we've got a system in place that we can just roll into the kind of places now and just I think key was the time of the goals. They score so early, but Livy can't change anything because it's so early in the game. They can't come out because they'll just get done in behind. And then early in the second half as well. And yeah, just the exact kind of away performance you want after Europe, just controlled, no worries, just dealt with everything.
100%. And see as well the way you're saying, obviously 2 wins now since I've returned to the top flight. It was only 1 before that. That for me is interesting, Tony. And I think Stuart makes a great point. We get them goals early. Livingston have really no plan B. The attack us or defend against us. Either one to do, we're going to break them down, especially if they do the attacking side of things. So they took the lead so early. Do you think that's the hoodoo lifted and all that talk? And obviously the plastic pitch comes into arguments, and I really don't like them. The Eredivisie has announced they're going to be banning all plastic use of 3G from 2025 onwards. For the professional game in Scotland anyway, to have a better aesthetic look to the eye, to the TV cameras, get rid of these bowling greens. They're absolutely terrible. I know maybe the likes of Haksabanovic, Starfelt, players who've played in that kind of environment before are all right with it, but we've seen Vickers didn't go to Madrid because he pulled up from it. It's an injury hazard, and for me, it doesn't look right for the Scottish game.
Yeah, no, it's not enjoyable, and eventually I think they're going to phase it out anyway. And I think there's long-term plans to phase it out. I think for the Livingston game, it was probably up there with one of cleverer performances of the season. The XG, not through like chance creation, so surprisingly, it was the lowest XG in the first half of any game this season. So, and if you look at our XG, which is 2.47, it was still well under 1 to about 80 minutes. So if you looked at that, you would think Celtic have not performed that well, not created a lot of chances. But as Stuart mentioned there, we restricted Livingston to 0.03 from open play. And we had 311 passes in the final third, which was the most we've done against any team. And the PPDA, passes per defensive action, was 5.3, which was our third lowest. So we went to Livingston. We've not let them pass it around. We've been all over them. We've kept it in their final third. We've not created that many chances till the 80th minute, but we've just been in control of the game. And it's just been a case of we've controlled that game calmly and cleverly. And then they've opened up a little bit later on. And we've got a little bit more chances, and the XG's finished off at 2.47. But as I say, it was under 1 to about 80 minutes. But it just, if you just look at the stats and take that step back, it looks like it was clever and just sort of patient. Clever and patient, I think, but hemmed into Livingston's back. It's having Livingston hem back and almost sort of doing a Livingston on Livingston. Do you know what I mean? Just sort of hounding them and just making them not play and just really controlling that game, but in their part of the pitch, and it was an interesting one looking at the stats, because I was at the game myself, and then at the time I was a bit like XG. I had to look at the stats at half time on the phone, and like XG at half time I'm like, that's really low. It's really low, and it just seemed it was quite weird that we weren't creating chances, but we just looked control of the game.
Yeah, I think the clever kind of thing here is coming through. I think Gary Melrose is with you, Tony, but I'm going to throw this one to you, Stuart. It was interesting watching the wide players against Livy. They really went to the byline and crossed it in. Obviously, an instruction after watching Rangers play to Livy's strengths. Do you think that was one of the things that you seen, or was that just part of our game plan as a whole there?
In terms of numbers, I'm not too sure. We definitely didn't have as many crosses as Rangers did against Livingston. Wanted to go kind of through the middle a lot. So, yeah, that's just showing that we can... That's the way we want to play anyway, and like Tony said, yeah, just a really clever kind of, we've found a way to break down probably the most tricky domestic opponent potentially. But yeah, in terms of crosses, I'm not 100% sure, but we definitely, that kind of suits us. We want to, our fullbacks are going to come in and play through them. I think we'll just start talking about Moy now, will I? I was going to bring you into it, but you can do it, because you know what? I don't even want to say the words. he had the most key passes in the Livingston game. He had 3 key passes. He didn't generate the highest XG from those passes. Turnbull had 2. He had 2 key passes, but generated more because obviously his cross for Jota's goal. But yeah, 3 key passes, and yeah, I think he was kind of key and kind of overloading. I think he was kind of going over more to the left, if I remember, overloading to kind of move Livingston about and kind of touch the other a couple of times. He was just playing it off one touch. It didn't always work, but yeah, I'll save the rest of the Moy chat just now.
Well, do you know what? There's no better time for you to do it, Stuart. Let's talk about our Moy. You're not getting a break here, right? I will give my bit on him. I'll give you my bit on him. Yeah, sit back, strap yourself in. It's going to be a tough one. No way joking. I just think Moy, for me, I've said it loads of times. It's like a broken down record. In games where it opens up, you see the best of Moy. But in games where you have to dig in, he's getting pressed, you don't see the best of him. He's very slow. He's very laboured. He can't turn. And I said it before, he runs like, he's all I'm going to say, RoboCop. He doesn't look like the player that was at Huddersfield. He doesn't look like the player that was playing over in China just last year. That's my opinion. And people are obviously fed up with me saying it. but I'm not going to change that. And I know you're going to throw some shiny numbers at me here, so fair, and let's have it.
I agree with that. I agree with all of that. You know, he's and especially for European level, if we're going to, you know, he's not suited. He's absolutely not suited. He's not got the at 32. He's not got the physical kind of. Even maybe at his best, he wouldn't have been suited. But and again, he's only playing. He's 500 odd minutes he's played so far, and Tony's making the point that St Mirren and stuff, he hadn't played with Hatate. He's now played with Hatate a lot more. He's now played with O'Reilly a lot more, and some of the stats are showing that, you know, certainly domestically he's more than fine. So just a couple of quick ones. So I just looked at this is just central defensive midfielders and centre mids that have played a minimum of 400 minutes in the Premiership this season. Second highest expected assists, 0.24. I think he's got 3 assists. Fifth highest expected goals, 0.19. Passing again. So yeah, when he's pressed, even domestically, it's a bit of an issue. But if Celtic players do get time on the ball, if you can get him into the right areas, you can get him with a bit of time on the ball. The stats are showing that he can be really effective. He's the most progressive passes in that data set, 10.67. Second for through balls, second for key passes, second for progressive runs as well, 1.78. And just in terms of, we're talking about ball security and that kind of thing, dispossessed and stuff, he's got the lowest turnovers of the 4. Or what I looked at McGregor, O'Reilly, Hatate and Turnbull. This is stats bomb data, so different to the Wisecout stuff. He's the lowest. There's 1.28 turnovers per 90. That's the lowest. So you can make an argument, a caveat that it's a really small sample size of data, but the most kind of secure in possession of all those Celtic midfielders. So I agree with everyone. And at 32, I think it really is a stopgap signing. And like we came back to the we started talking about how that midfield's going to look next season. He's certainly not the long-term answer. I absolutely agree with that and agree with issues, but interesting that domestically, he's really good. He would have been a great player to have 3 or 4 years ago. He'd been brilliant. But just now, he's still got something to offer. And I think lost in terms of Beaton, Rogic, other than McGregor and McCarthy, who doesn't really play. There's no experience in that midfield. It's a really young midfield. Ange obviously felt he needed a bit more experience in there. Somebody who he knew and trusted. He didn't have a pre-season as well. He's still getting up to speed. He said that the other week when they were talking about him. So maybe, he's got the World Cup as well. Maybe that'll give him a bit of re-energise him as well. And he could still play a big part towards the end of the season. But yeah, that's my Moy.
I'm sure he's
my case for Moy.
I'm sure he's one of them players that old cliche, good in and around the place. He smiles a lot and makes jokes. I don't know, whatever he does in and around the place, Tony. I might be a bit naive here because them stats, I have to say, Stuart, by the way, pretty impressive there, buddy. I mean, coming in second place in some things, first place for others, lowest turnover, and that kind of stuff, that is impressive. But the eye test Gary Melrose spoke about, I don't know what he's saying because them stats for me don't match the eye test. Because when my eyes tell me he's shite, if I put it plain and simple. So, so what do you think, Tony? I know you've mentioned it before. I'm having you at a back and forth about it, but you do like him, I think, don't you?
I wouldn't necessarily say a massive fan, but what I did just sort of wanted to point out right back at the early days of the St Mirren game was that it was the chances he was getting. So he was getting out and coming into the team alongside Turnbull. And Turnbull's not fast as well. So I think you look at the stats that Stuart talked about there, and he's had more minutes, so they're going to be heavily weighted when he's got full games alongside Hatate and O'Reilly. So he's in that dynamic in midfield there that it's best suited for him. And we've found something that suits Moy in the fact that O'Reilly's playing that defensive role, Hatate's doing the running, and then Hatate's doing the pressing. And then we're looking at, out of the 3, the person to control the game and pass it about is Moy. And in that situation, I think he's done well, and he'll do better as well. I think you'll start to see him. Well, seeing my battery's running out, and my
I thought Moy was behind you. I thought Moy was breaking in.
But
I'll just.
My daughter's 12, and her and my middle kid's 17, and we were watching the Hearts game in the house, and my kids, they were saying, "How slow is Moy, Dad? How slow is Moy?" So yeah, I think in that dynamic with Hatate and O'Reilly, I think he'll get even better. I think he's looking a bit. You can see his face when he missed like a couple of chances. I think he's lacking a bit of confidence as well. When he scores and when he starts doing it, I think he'll start to kick on and be even better than he is just now. That's the good news. That's the upside. The downside is if you put, say, Abelgard in, who's a little bit slower, or if you play Turnbull, or you change that dynamic, I'm not convinced Moy's going to keep to what he's doing just now. So on the good side, he's going to get better, but the downside is you can't shuffle that team a bit. You've got to protect him with a Hatate and a O'Reilly, and that's not great when you've got to think about who they're playing alongside. So a bit middle for.
I mean, see, to be fair, Stuart, Michael Ross, you're 100% right in that one. But see, to be fair, I'm coming to you here with a two-pronged question, right? I get a lot of grief for saying there's players in the SPFL I like. Egyptian King has named one of them. Dylan Levitt plays for Dundee United. I like Cammy Devlin. I think he's an absolute terrier. He might not be the best in the eye, but he gets in and about you, and he tortured Moy at Tynecastle, let's be honest, his fellow Aussie partner. But could any of them players make a case to come into Celtic in that type of role, a bit bar player like Moy, or is Moy just the best option or best going forward that we have?
Like I say, it's just convenient. I think in terms of he was looking to get out of China, I think we needed a more experienced midfielder in there. I like both. Like you said, Levitt. I really like Levitt. I don't know how you would fit in because he's definitely not. He'd be more a McGregor kind of deep line playmaker than a defensive midfielder. I don't know how. I don't think see him play too far forward either. He's either played in a 2 or a 1 at the kind of base of midfield. I like Devlin as well. I think he's a bit can be a bit kind of rash at times. A bit, he had that red card against Rangers, and he can. But I think he's got I don't know if he's got enough quality on the ball either. He's maybe all right for doing that bit off the ball, but yeah, I think there is option. Still, I think they had quite a bit of interest in Connor Barron as well over the summer.
I think that's what Michael's talking about.
Yeah. I think he's only just come back in the team because he was injured. Not seen any of him this season, but bits I did see last season. He's maybe one that because he can do he can get about the pitch and he's got a bit of that quality on the ball. He's maybe got the mix that they're looking for, and I think they maybe will see looking at players from Scotland in terms of the kind of eligibility for European football and stuff, because there's not a huge amount of players coming through from the academy. There's not a huge amount of domestically trained players in that squad just now. Maybe why guys like maybe Welsh hasn't been moved on. So who is the Egyptian King?
Egyptian King is a guy who's a Liverpool fan but a Celtic fan. He talks sense. I like him.
All right, okay.
I think like the argument. I mean, Gary Melrose is gained Tony here. I'll throw you in this one. Too many fans would rather see a Serbian. He's just plucked the nationality out of the sky here, prospect, rather than a proven SPFL player. Do you think that's probably ignorance towards players in our league? Because I find there's a lot of it, and I think the likes of Dylan Levitt, the likes of Cammy Devlin, Connor Barron, the young prospects coming through. We're quick to forget John McGinn. We missed out on him. Stephen Fletcher, all them types of players. So we've missed out on a few gems. Why not try with these players up and coming?
Yeah, I think so. And I think with Ange, we've got the system's more important than the player. So it's never been a better time to bring in a young Scottish player because they can fit into that system. Do you know what I mean? And develop as well. So I can't see why Dylan Levitt couldn't come in and play that holding role of McGregor, because you need to think about who's going to replace McGregor when he gets older and things like that, or give him a bit of rest as well. And we've talked about it earlier about why Albergard never played and things like that. So the primary role of the number 6 in Angie's team is being able to put your foot on the ball, pass the ball, carry the ball, progress the team up. And I think Levitt looks like he's got the capability to do that. And then if he plays alongside better players, because if you looked at the Scottish football, you said, there's a right back on loan at St Johnstone called Anthony Ralston, and there's a left back at Kilmarnock called Greg Taylor. Would you sign they two players? Do you know what I mean? So and we're happy enough with them. So
I think it is. It's a market that we should get back into. I know what Postecoglou has his options, and he's well versed in scouting European markets, Japan, Asia, Iran, wherever it may be. So any players you bring in, I'll fully back him. But I do think sometimes we miss out on wee gems that are floating about the Scottish Premier League. But kind of finishing off, transfer news coming away from the hoodoo at Livingston, that's been put to bed. Stuart, you've done a wee piece on our hopefully new signing. Looks like Faisal Kobe confirmed he is leaving. Obviously no club has said or confirmed who he's going to. But what do we know about Kobayashi, the centre back?
That looks like we're on the ball, like he said, Ange, that we were going to be on the front foot and there will be a lot of turnover. So this looks like the kind of first sign of it. So 22-year-old left-footed centre back, looks like it's on a free as well. So pretty low risk from a market that we've done quite well from recently.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's quite young. Like I was saying, we were chatting just before, like Kyogo and Hatate went through the kind of university path in Japan, so they were a bit older when they, I think he's 20, whatever he is, he's only in his like third or fourth professional year of playing football, whereas Kobayashi's played since he was about 18. He had a loan spell with Yokohama. He had a loan spell with our team before that. Loan spell with Yokohama 3 years ago, kind of broke into the team the year before, and in this season he's played pretty much every minute. But just quite an interesting one in terms of the fact that he's left-footed. That would bring some different. All centre-back options just now are right-footed. I think it'll be the fact he's a wee bit younger, the fact that it's a defender, it's been all midfielders and attackers brought in from Japan. He maybe needs a wee bit of time to readjust, but I think the positive should be that his aerial win rate is one of the best in the J League for a centre-back, 66.67%. It's broadly comparable with Celtic and Scottish Premiership, probably a bit higher actually. So if there's a bit of drop-off there in terms of takes to adjust, he should be fine defensively. Passing, not huge. Faisal Kobe, I do have an Faisal Kobe had a pretty disappointing campaign. They finished 13th, but they're usually one of the ones at the top. So his numbers aren't hugely, don't stand out right away. The aerial duel stands out, which is a positive. In terms of progressive passes, forward passes, his volume doesn't stand out, but he's above average for his accuracy in these passes. So if you scale him up into a Celtics team that dominates the ball, Faisal Kobe dominate the ball, but not to the extent that Celtic do. That would probably, that would fit in quite well with Celtic as well. Like just the left-footed aspect is big because that's kind of sought after profile. It's quite rare. They're not slightly rarer. So, and he's got kind of attributes in terms of being able to switch the ball from left to right, big switches of play, stepping in and playing. So, yeah, I don't know if I think I had 6'1". I'd seen in terms of his height. Somebody saying there about his height. So he's roughly the same height, slightly taller than Carter Vickers. He's maybe not as strong, but I think he would be. If you pair him with Carter Vickers, in terms of he would be, the one that would, like Jens is doing just now, the one that would step out and be more progressive with the ball. Carter Vickers doing more of the kind of traditional defensive stuff. So yeah, just quite encouraging that that we seem to be on the ball, and the fact that it's a free seems pretty low risk. And I suppose it throws up questions about the centre back position going forward in terms of Welsh and whether to make Jens a permanent signing. But encouraging in terms of that. We're only at the start of November. It looks like we've got a 1st January signing pretty much in the bag already.
Yeah, 100%. Like ruthless aggression in the transfer market, starting to come straight back to you. Come on, big yourself up. You know you want to say it. You said it before to me off air. When did you first hear or do anything in Kobayashi? Let me hear it.
I wasn't gonna. I was gonna.
You're doing it now.
I'm going to do it now. I'll do it now. You've set it up for me. So I done I wrote for Total Football Analysis for a bit. It's an analytics website. Second piece I done was identifying a ball playing centre back in the J League that would suit Celtic, and he was one of the 3 that I picked out. So
bingo.
I made Twitter though. If you go on my Twitter page, you'll see that I was making sure everyone knew that last Sunday when I seen the links, and I went, "Oh, that's it. I need to go on here."
You have to take that.
Know. Yeah, well,
that's a victory.
Yeah, definitely. It was interesting. He didn't. I done it kind of scatters to start with, and he didn't. He wasn't like standing out in any like one specific kind of like attribute. But when I looked at the pizza chart things that I do that kind of shows all of their stats, like when I done that, because he was above average for most stuff, but not like I say, not a complete and utter standout. But then when you looked at his whole picture, you're like, he has got what you want, because you're looking at those possession stats and all that kind of thing, because that's what you're looking for ball playing. But I was like adding into the piece that, well, he's going to come out of a physical league. You'll need to have at least decent, if not the best, defensive stats if he's to, transfer that into Scottish football. And he had the best kind of defensive stats. So, like I say, Vissel Kobe had a kind of a rough campaign, so his numbers weren't quite as good when I done the recent scout report on him for the Celtic way. But yeah, I think thanks for letting me squeeze that one in there.
Mate, no problem. And Tony, come to yourself. I mean, again, good sign we're getting business on early, but does that spell the end for Welsh at Celtic?
I would think so. Yeah. I think you look at Welsh and he's okay. There's no massive flaws there, but has he got the potential to be better and get to that level of Champions League? And I don't see it. Do you know what I mean? I don't see it. He's pretty solid, but I don't think he's got. I think he's at his ceiling. But well, with us, he might get better at another team in a different style of team. So I think he'd probably go into Pastors New. So yeah, no, I think it'd be. I was excited about Kobayashi, but I think that's just because my favourite film, The Usual Suspects. He was in that. I think that was. So it might be a double signing, Kobayashi and Kaiser Soze. You know what I mean? No, and like looking at players nowadays, it's not the same as it was before when people were saying, "Who's this Moravcik?" and all this kind of nonsense, or saying this player's going to be great, etc. Just stuff. I read Stewart's article, it was brilliant, and you have a little bit of YouTube clips as well. So, but when you get the stats and the YouTube clips, I know YouTube clips can be sort of made up to flatter, to deceive, but when you put them alongside the stats that you've got, you do get a decent picture of people. And we were talking about Abelgard earlier on. His profile, it looks exactly what his profile said. So looking at the piece that Stewart done and other good ones on Twitter as well, it looks exciting. Do you know what I mean? And as Stewart said, that left-sided centre back, it can take us to the next level. That's the thing as well. It's not just like signing a player who could maybe replace someone that's there or be better a little bit. It adds something different to the team. It takes the team up, not just that position. It takes the team up to a different level. So.
It shows one thing, lads. We don't stand still, and we're preparing. We're going to be ruthless in the transfer market, and it's something I'm looking forward to. But in terms of the podcast, we never stop, 100%. I seen he got his wee coat on the wall at Celtic Park as well. The one we come back bigger, better, and stronger because we never stop. That's on the wall inside the ground, so that's pretty decent. But in terms of the podcast, guys, that's us finished. Have you enjoyed this one?
Yeah, it's been great.
Good stuff. Been a learning curve for me.
But hopefully we'll be back again in 2 weeks. Hopefully on a Thursday this time. I've had a lot of things to do, obviously, on Thursday afternoons, and I let these guys know in the morning, and sometimes I don't like doing that, but we'll make do. We'll be back again with StatsDrops number 5, 2 weeks' time. And until then, well, until tomorrow, actually, when a regular podcast is back, stay well and keep safe. Hail, hail.